The OPAL awardees for 2014 are Tracy, Baim, Representative Greg Harris, and Senator Doug Harmon. They are all well known to all of us, so I'm not going to go over their bios with you, and I know you find that probably pretty boring. But their collective efforts to pass the Illinois Religious Freedom and Marriage Fairness Act. They're organizing, knocking on doors, fundraising, bringing advocates together, creating common messages, planning a march on Springfield on a very rainy, cold day. And slowly, very slowly, using relationships based on respect to sway a reluctant legislative body to, as Ray often quotes, bend the arc of history towards justice. Those actions granted the LGBT community the most basic of rights, the right to love and be loved. Openly and honestly and with the full protection of the law. This is a story of the intersection between history and personal narratives, beginning with brave individuals who said to family, friends, and co-workers, "I'm gay." And when you scorn, ridicule, laugh at, oppress, ignore LGBT people, you are doing all of those things to me. Most of us, I suspect, never in our lifetime believed that we would gain the right to marry. Grateful for the village registry, which was an important step, but not the ultimate step. It was the many individual voices and that roared, and the leadership that rose to change history forever. But the rapid swell and the crest of this wave towards equality is grounded in the risks and the ripple of those first voices who stood up and said, "I'm gay." This truly has been the summer of love. A moment of time when history becomes very personal. But we must take note that history chose the moment. What makes these marriages different is that many of us were forced to wait until leaders like Don and Greg and Tracy got the job done for us. These are not marriages of naive, dewy-eyed 20-year-olds. But couples who had to wait while they bought homes, raised children, cared for elderly parents, and sometimes for each other. These weddings have been on hold for 10, 20, and sometimes 30 years, including my own. Every summer wedding, or conversion from a civil union, or changing from a prior wedding out of state, was unique and told the story of that particular couple. But the history of LGBT people was always a guest at every one of those weddings. As I look back over this past summer, what I remember most are the families. The parents who survived, the grandparents who survived, young and grown children and grandchildren, and their absolutely unmitigated joy at watching their parents, their children, finally be able to say, "I do," to the person that they chose out of all the people in the universe. For that, Don, Tracy, Greg, we thank you and we honor you. You have made history, but you have changed our lives.
I started covering the LGBT community in 1984, and when OPALGA came along just a few years later, it really expanded what the outside world saw about our community. This has been one of my favorite organizations to cover over the last 25 years. I've come out here for hearings at the City Council. I've come out here for the gay games. It's just a phenomenal organization. So when they said that they were going to honor me, it was really, the honor was crazy good, because OPALGA has been so important and vital to the Chicago area LGBT community. I think everybody here who participated in the march and believed in the outside agitation as well as the inside work that needed to happen to pass marriage equality, and the thousands of people who worked on it and helped make it happen. We have a long way to go for our community in terms of helping our youth and our seniors, so there'll be lots more to do, but it's a great night to celebrate, so thank you so much for this.
I am very grateful for the award. It is wonderful to be from Oak Park. Before I went to Springfield, I thought I was a moderator. Greg was kind enough to defer to me, and that's good because I'm going to talk about Greg. I'm so honored to share this award with him. He was a remarkable sponsor of this legislation. He was tenacious, he was graceful. At times he suffered the slings and arrows of critics and folks who second-guessed his decisions, but he made every right decision along the way. You'll be surprised that legislation is not a linear process. It is almost never the case that the straight line is the shortest distance between the beginning and the end. And if there are pitfalls and traps all along the way. We are used to being criticized, and it comes with the job. But when you hear it from the folks that you care about the most, when you hear it from the folks who you're really trying to fight for, it's difficult. So I really give Greg all the credit in the world for persevering. He got this done in a remarkable way. But one other thing I want to say, when I was first elected to the Senate 12 years ago, we were in the closing gasp of a decades-long battle to include sexual orientation in the Human Rights Act, to prevent basic discrimination in housing and employment. That's where we started, and it was a difficult lift then. To get from there 12 years later to marriage equality in political terms is unbelievable. I joked with someone earlier today that our job as politicians is to take great ideas and take credit for them. But I have to tell you how important what happened here in Oak Park over the last 25 years was in this venture in Springfield. I have never seen public opinion change on an issue like it did on this issue in this short period of time. But it is because of people like you living in Oak Park, raising families, putting a face on an issue that had so long been pushed into the shadows. And I cannot give you enough praise for all the work that you've done day in and day out, and I am so proud to be from Oak Park for that. I'm not just like my senatorial pride to make one more point. All of the things that we have done over the last decade are wonderful and precious and at risk. I don't want to make a political speech or start a commercial, but we have an election coming up, and there is a candidate for governor who said he would have vetoed marriage equality. It's not about re-electing any politician. It's not about protecting our careers. It's about protecting the strides we have made. So do not fail to protect the right. Get out there and vote.
So Colette, and all the members here, thank you so much for this. But thank you more for showing us the 25-year history of this group and letting us remember how much work people put in to lead us to this day. You know, what we owe those who are here in this room and those who have gone before us as well. That was totally brought home to me last night. I was at an event downtown for a group called Almost Home Kids. And this is a group that raises money and provides services for medically fragile and technologically dependent children across the Chicagoland area. And these are babies and children who cannot exist without a ventilator or without a trach tube or without a feeding tube. And the parents cannot afford these high-tech services, and this group helps them with that. So one of the other award winners, the volunteer award, was a guy named Joe Monahan. Never seen him before in my life. Joe was telling me that 25 years ago, he handled, 25 years ago, the first same-sex adoption in the state of Illinois. And was that you? Yes. And to give you an idea of how far we have come, and so you probably heard this story, you probably tell it better than me. He said, oh my God, you're the marriage guy. So he said, I did this way back when. He said, when I did, I had these women, they were clients, and they came to me, and I said, oh, okay, we'll go try to do this. I don't know, we'll go to court. And they went to court, they presented, and the judge said, counselor, could you come back in my chambers for a minute? And they went back there, and the judge said to him, how could a good Irish Catholic boy like you get a case like this? Joe said, these women have been my clients, and I looked at them, I looked at their families, this is the right thing to do. And the judge said, yeah, we got to figure out a way to get this done. We have to figure out a way to get this done. And it's those kind of stories, and the stories you told here, the stories that are explained, in the displays you have there, that are just so important for us to remember. And Tracy has done so much work in writing down the history of those who have led us in this struggle and have brought us to this point, and we should be very grateful to them for that. But we also have to be grateful, it's one thing to be lesbian or gay like I am, and say I'm for marriage equality and have been for it for a long time, but you guys have this is a paid political announcement by the Senate here. You guys are remarkably lucky that Don Harmon has been in the legislature, because long before it was a majority public opinion to say we should go out and fight for LGBT issues, Don Harmon has been there. Bisexual and transgender community. He is a leader for workers. He is a leader for immigrants and refugees. He is a leader for a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions. And like he said, all those are in flux. And I just can't say again what Don said to you just a moment ago. Vote, get your neighbors to vote, bring everyone to the polls week after next. It's very important.
We were that couple, and in order for that adoption to go through, the birth mother, who was me, had to relinquish my rights. So for a 6-month period, our son was aborted the state. We had to have a home study. We had to get references who would, vouch for our parenting skills. And I will tell you that social worker was not as good a social worker as I am. There was a risk that the judge would make a different decision and neither of us would have custody of our child. And I had to explain this to a 3-year-old and try to help him understand what was going on and why we were going to court. And the day of the home study was the only time in his entire childhood where he deliberately destroyed something. And I'm like, oh God, she's going to come in and see this. This is not going to go well. He was terrified out of his mind because a 3-year-old can't understand why I would relinquish my rights to him. But fortunately, we had a great judge, and Joe thought it was a really good idea to sort of put Seth up on the judge's platform. Well, he's anxious out of his mind, and he's like running up and down up there, back and forth, back and forth. And he looked at me and he said, "Is he always this active?" I'm like, no, he's really, really anxious. And this is what that law changes. This will never have to happen again. So,